Good evening, everybody, and welcome to, where are we? March 2024 episode of the Leather Chronicles. I have a very special guest this evening. Before we get started, a little housekeeping. The Carter Johnson Library and Collection merch is available at sucktherainbow.com. All the CJLC merch you purchased benefits the Carter Johnson Library and Collection directly. Vi's book, To Love, to Obey, to Serve, is currently available again. You can find that also at sucktherainbow.com, along with What is Leather, Fanny Hill, and Tales of the Pearl. If you've ever wanted copies, they are available there. You can find previous episodes of the Leather Chronicles at the ACES YouTube channel and over 170 videos at the Carter Johnson Library and Collection YouTube channel. I believe that's all of the links there. I would like to say that Miss Carter agreed to be on the program this evening on the condition that everybody did their absolute best to donate just $1. So if you would be interested in going to the Carter Johnson donations page and clicking on that Jill Carter just $1 level, it would be greatly appreciated for Jill's time this evening. And Miss Carter, we are going to monitor the number of people that are in the Zoom tonight and the donations that are made. And sucktherainbow.com will be making a $1 donation so that for the number of people we had here tonight, the Carter Johnson Library and Collection will get just $1 for every participant this evening.
You're going to match it.
We're gonna make sure that there is $1 for everybody that's here. Yes, ma'am. Now, my guest this evening is the first Black International Miss Leather from 1996, an original Onyx Pearl, board member, judge, speaker, author, award winner, visionary behind the Leather Day of Caring, the Carter and Carter Johnson Library and Collection, husbundy, mistress, mentor, community icon, 2024 Leather Hall of Fame inductee, and part samurai, Jill Carter. Good evening, Miss Carter. How are you?
Tired.
I left out of my introduction. I told you I was going to do it, so I'll do it now. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not necessarily the Leather Chronicles. This is the longest conversation I have ever had with Jill Carter, and I thank you all for coming. Ma'am, my starter question is always the same. With the benefit of hindsight, when did you discover you were kinky?
When I met Miss Johnson.
And when was that?
Oh, that was 1973. And our whole relationship, other than the fact that she was my boss at the time and was brought there specifically to deal with this radical that seemed to be behind a lot of, let's just say, things that foiled what some of the establishment was doing at the time. I apologize in advance if I use some terms and that are old school terms. Just if it doesn't make sense to you, let me know. I was at college and I was quite an activist then, fighting injustices against students and specifically Black students. But you talk about me being very, very quiet. Because I worked alone and did a lot behind the scenes, the establishment can never ever point the finger directly at me and say, we know you did this. We know you're behind this. We know that you're the person who had all these kids storm the big center there, over 100 and some kids, just, and held them accountable for their actions, their sneaky actions, actually. So they hired Miss Johnson. And I have to say, initially, I didn't like her. Um, but it's interesting because Miss Johnson saved my life not once, but twice. Um, because I met her at this, what do they call, Outward Bound that they had training for us all. And that's when I met her. And I sized up all three of the, at the time, they're called graduate assistants. And I was a resident assistant, and I figured, okay, which one can I chew up and spit out? And watching Miss Johnson, I really didn't like her. But how she saved my life was that, I told them I couldn't swim, and everyone went swimming in this watering hole. It was up on a rock high up. How the hell it happened? I slipped off that damn rock and went straight down. And all I could hear was people saying, oh, I don't think she can swim. No, I don't. And so Miss Johnson jumped in the water and got me out. And I didn't panic because I kind of figured, it wasn't my time. Um, then I learned that I was assigned to her. Wasn't happy about that. Um, Anyway, I was also going through a period of time where I was learning what the outside world was about, because I was really a very good student, top student. I was known. President knew me. Finance first, they knew me. But the thing about it was that a lot of people didn't know I knew a lot of people. And I knew the people that were their bosses in many ways. And I could walk into their office and really tell them what was going on. And how things really was happening. Uh, and being an activist has been something that even in high school, and I think about it, I was um, always out there fighting for what was right. So speed this thing up. Miss Johnson was curious about me. Um, I never let anyone see my poetry. And this woman walks into my room. I'm writing, and she takes my poetry. And for some reason, I let her take it. Now, I don't know why I allowed her to walk out with my writings because I never let anyone. People knew I was a writer and knew that's how I got the people thought I was brilliant but strange. Everywhere I went, I was always someone that was strange, but a very gifted, brilliant person. But one day she asked me, what makes you tick? What do you want to be? And I blurted out, a pimp. And I really did want to be a pimp. Uh, uh, my upbringing has been very strict. My upbringing was a Southern household. My upbringing was very spiritual, Quaker town. So where did I get this fantasy from that I wanted to be a pimp, and not just any old pimp? I wanted to be a pimp that taught um, the stable the art of love. Never made love before. I don't even know what that crap was, but I just had it in my head, the training that I wanted for my stable, that they would be able to um, make a person's dream come true because they knew every part of their body. They knew how to make them tick. And they could cross over into something I didn't know what it was at the time, but I wanted them to be able to take maybe rough sex. Didn't know what it was. Didn't know I was being kinky. To Miss Johnson's surprise, she Well, that came a little later. Let me tell you the key thing of this. I lied to Miss Johnson. So I was supposed to be on duty weekend. I was running with my buddies. Um, so I told her that I had to go home Friday to have a tooth extraction. I'd be back Saturday. Well, no, I didn't go. My buddies and I, we went out drinking. My buddies, my boyfriend. Uh, Saturday came, they're like, don't go back. We're having such a good time. I said, okay, well, how do I get out? Just call her and tell her, that you're still down at your parents' house. You can't make it back up. And I'm good because my minor was theater. So I get on the phone. I'm like, can't make it back because Johnson's like, okay, no, not a problem. So I didn't go get back there until Sunday night. Now my duty is ended. Miss Johnson covered that duty a whole weekend. So as I park in the parking lot and as I'm headed to the dorm, all I'm hearing is Miss Johnson wants to see you right away. It's almost like timing. Everywhere I did all along the way, Miss Johnson wants to see you right away. Miss Johnson wants to see you right away. I get to the desk. Miss Johnson wants to see you right away. All right, so get on the elevator. Go up to her floor. Hers is like the third floor. Elevator opens and there's Miss Johnson standing there. All right, okay. All right, so I get to come out of the elevator and she says to me, so where were you? Naturally, I opened my mouth and told her a lie. And she slapped me. She slapped me hard enough, I hit the floor. I'm
Miss
like,
Johnson.
I'm really thinking, I'm thinking, what the F is going on here? All right, so I get up because I don't believe she hit me, but all right. So she asked that question again. So where were you? You gonna tell a lie? Tell the same lie. Told the same lie. She slapped me again. Went down. And then, as I was getting up, she said to me, now, before you get up, I think you better think about this. Either we are going to become the best friends or I'm going to fire you. So think about it before you rise up and I ask this question. I rose up the third time and she asked me where I was, and I, of course, told her. She did a lot to save me because I was flunking out. You have an A student going down to F. She was curious about me. She was wondering what the hell makes you tick. And this is where it comes back to. She asked me, "What do you want to be? What do you want to do?" So I told her about my pimp fantasy. No, I didn't want to be a madam, and I couldn't tell you why it was a pimp. That's that male side of me, but it was a pimp fantasy. Not the typical pimp that you see out there. This is the classy pimp. One that turned heads when they entered the room. And she said, well, what would you do? I said, first of all, I would train my girls. Train them how? Do it on me. Now, you'll have to ask Miss Johnson why she said that.
Oh, we will.
But we began our relationship, a very different relationship, based on that. And again, both of us were very straight laced. That for all intents and purposes, we're heterosexuals. I didn't have anything about being or being with a woman, but I had a thing that you could be very close to someone and have a friendship without crossing that line necessarily into a being sexual. I had a number of people that I was very close to at that time. You know, starting off in college, my quest was to find the ultimate best friend, and she probably walked into my life at that time. Now that I think about it, she probably walked into my life. She sure did. 50 years later, here we are. Uh, so I started, I might say, started training Miss Johnson as if she was going to be my bottom girl. And I started doing kinky things to her, tying her up. Um, I remember one day her boyfriend came by. He left her some money, left her quite a bit of money. Um,
Miss Carter, I feel at this point that I just want to remind you that this is going to be on YouTube, and just try to keep it so we don't have to do too much bleeping, okay? Just try to
oh,
keep
okay.
it,
No
keep
cuss,
it. You
no
can
cussing.
cuss. Just keep it clean, as clean as possible.
Oh, it's
That's
going to
all.
be clean. Okay.
Okay. Yes,
It's
ma'am.
going to be very clean. Um, so Miss Johnson gave him back some of the money. Told him it was too much. And I remember coming from a class and seeing the money, and she's saying, "Well, my boyfriend gave me more than that, but I gave him some of it back." And I was just like, "Okay, this is not going to work." So, if any of you are familiar with a pimp stick, yeah, I used the pimp stick. So, different things like that, you know. And then something happened because we formed a love, but as a lot of it was kinky in the beginning, one day I woke up to the fact that, you know what, I love this woman. Well, this is different. And so that's a whole different story. That's the love story for us. But
So,
we came together. We left college together. We found well, we stayed with her mother for a while. Her mother was very, very accepting of me. As a matter of fact, beautiful, beautiful woman. It's like my second mother. Um, and she also, as time went on, got to know what we were into and was very supportive to that and even participated in the kink world. Uh, Along the journey, we thought we were alone. Um, and you know how it is when you come out and you think there's nobody else in the world, especially when you have a religious background, you think you're going to go to hell, um, that you just feel so much alone until you find that you're not. And we happen to um, go to one of those sex shops, I guess is what you call it, way, way from where we live because we're also educators, licensed educators. So, and we found a couple of rags. That's what they called them, little pamphlets. Uh, and there was an article, or Orland Spiegel, a club in New York, and Miss Johnson said, you know, we should go check it out. And so we went, And that's where we met another one of the Leather Hall of Fame people, Jack Jackson. Now, moving up towards this, I had put Miss Johnson in her cuffs, ankle wrist cuffs, ankle and wrist cuffs, and she had a collar. She had very specific tasks that she had to do while I was away from work. Matter of fact, she stayed in the nude all day long and only was in her what I allowed her to wear. Her collar, her cuffs, her ankle. She had tasks she had to perform and have done by the time I got home. So we were moving into something that's, again, we're both just acting out because a lot of the stuff that her cuffs and things, she made them. She was very good at making leather. So we were kind of like, you would say, poor in those days. So we'd save up our money and she'd get a hide and she would make some of the things that I would put her in. There's nothing like a submissive who knows how to make their toys. They come up with some of the, you got to thank the submissives for a lot of the toys that we have here because that part of, and we're like, oh yeah, you know what, we can do this and we can take it to this level. But we went to Oil and Spiegel and she was on her leash. Back then, a slave carried themselves in a very different way. You know, the master or mistress carried themselves with confidence. You know, and that's really is how the two of you move. That gave you sort of your reputation, and the way you played. Gave people a different respect for you and your name. So here I walk in, which is very unusual to see two Black women. And Jack was the only other Black person that we saw. And he's up in the front, and we kind of walk in. We are hesitant, but nobody sees it. And it's covered, well guarded. And Jack shouts out, "Come in, little sisters, you're welcome. Come in, come on up." I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, here we go. And Jack was just a phenomenal man. Jack Jackson. Because when I tell you I stand on Jack's shoulders, I literally do. Because as a community, we were very close knit, and that opened doors. Meeting those people opened doors to where a dungeon was going to be, where a party was going to be, where these gatherings of other people were going to be. And these were play spaces. So a lot of times when you went into these spaces, you were showcasing your abilities and your skills. And I'm reflecting because there were even stages, you know. So you got to be on the stage, and Jack would either come on up here, Miss Carter, or I would showcase my slave and how I had my skills and her abilities, and the exchange of energy, and people were in awe of what was happening, not just how I received the different things or the different things that I did, but the way we move and the energy and how she was so connected that she knew what I wanted, either by a snap of her finger or a look of the eye. Again, I rarely had to talk, so you're getting more out of me tonight. Um, or Jack would have someone on stage and would want me to show my abilities. And I'm at the time was a little smaller. I'm 5'3", this little powerful person with this ability to um, bring a giant down to their knees. I learned, I practiced, I knew the different pressure points. I knew how to just with a little touch, and I could bring someone your size and bigger, Matt, to their knees. And that's an awesome thing to watch and feel like, okay, we mess with her. Or someone who's able to wail the floggers, or hands or whatever. It was just um, those showcases is what again gained you your reputation. So people would see that, they see how you carry yourself, they would see how your slave responds and carries themselves. Um, and naturally, I walk in a room, I got a cord, as you would say. Um, and we played in our little spaces, hellfire. And we were protective of each other, and we had to be, because it was still looked upon as assault and battery, still could be arrested. The party still could be raided, which is why it was word of mouth, and you needed to know who you were bringing in. Um, by the way, I did start my business, shall we say, my side business, Fantasy Inc. And I had a number of clients. And we had a second person, first person who did most of our met with our clients. And again, the way I handle it, it wasn't a wham bam, thank you, ma'am. You know, it could be snowing. Probably, and I was out in the snow watching BBB movies while they entertained the client, and they could do that for as long as the client wanted. So there was no time limit. And it was, nice. They could do, they had to play the whole apartment. But then I got some clients who actually was a police sergeant who asked me, "Do you do something, a little kinky?" And I'm like, "Why? What is he talking about?" And because I interpret things, when she's naive, I know what's going on. When I'm naive, she gets what's going on, and she's like, "You're natural. They're wanting this. They're wanting what you do naturally with me." Oh, okay. And I was a mistress, but I could have become a very rich mistress. As a matter of fact, I didn't charge because I had a job, and I had a very good job. And so I was an executive by day and a mistress by night. Um, and I found it very interesting that, all right, you got a client coming in, you got to do this. But we met a policeman, and he got us into that. And he became one of our best friends, what have you, because, whenever I had clients coming in, he was on. So I didn't have to worry about the police. or anything. And through this being a mistress, especially one that wasn't charging, the only thing I asked them to do was to bring a token. Now I got my favorite beverage often, or I might say, you need to bring me 10 silver dollars or some singles, brand new singles, whatever, but it wasn't about the money. And I had some quite a clientele
I bet.
that I built up. Judges, lawyers, doctors, um, and some of them were slaves, and some of them were submissives. Uh, what's the difference? A lot of times, different for the submissive was that the submissive could go into that headspace, and we define what that headspace would be for that period of time. And so when the scene, as we referred to it, when the scene was over, they went back to being themselves. As long as they were in that scene, you know, they were submissive. A slave was someone who saw themselves 24/7, always being in service. Now, one thing about a slave is that they're not stupid. And one of the things I used to tell folks around that time, I said, why do I want a stupid slave around? I want a smart slave, right? And in my job is to take care of that slave, is to protect them when they can't protect themselves, um, to make sure that they are sleeping, they're eating, they're getting their needs met so that they can take care of me. So I have a big responsibility. And also that while we're playing, we didn't have safe words because you really needed to be in touch with the person you were playing with. And you needed to know there were things I learned by another one of our leather legends, Monique Van Cleef, was how to, when you tie up a slave, how you can touch them, all right, so that you can feel whether or not the knots are too tight or the hands are going cold. You touch the body and you're in tune to that body to know that something is happening. You're listening to the breathing, you're watching them. So you wanted your person that you're playing with to fly. And that was your responsibility to be there, to catch them, to let them fly and soar. And you got high from watching them, from that power exchange. Because once you got into it, I mean, as you all know, the energy that is exchanged when that happens. So mistresses, masters had a responsibility. We had some unwritten rules. One is that you never discipline your slave when you're angry. Minimal amount of drugs were used. You could not be high, you could not be drunk out of your head and go play. All right. Now, what would happen when I said we policed ourselves is that you took people like a Jack Jackson or the chief or someone who was very known and respected in the community. And if they saw you doing something, in a scene, because a lot of times when scenes were going on, people were watching. But if it was a bad scene, they'd stop it. If you were hitting in the wrong spot, they stopped it. And I remember that's the last thing you wanted to have happen was to be embarrassed, or as we would call it, to be called down. as a master or mistress. Because often, if a master or mistress was called down in our public venues where people were watching, they disappeared. They never came back. Now, usually those mistresses or masters were people who were more into what they were doing than about the business of really playing. And that's why they disappeared, because the ones who wanted to learn would ask. And we didn't mind showing and teaching each other some of the things, some of the skills that we had. You know, someone had fire play. You could learn, and they would teach you how to fire play or how to um, hit different parts of the body, you know, how to use the flog or how to use the whip. Uh, but like I said, we were a close knitted group. Um, and every place we went, um, you saw the same faces and a few more new faces. Um,
So you're in New York. You've left college. You're at Vi's, staying with Vi's mom in Jersey.
well, at that point we had our own place in
Okay.
East
So
Orange.
you went to Jersey, you venture into New York, and then all of this exploration in New York. Tell me what New York was like. What was the scene like when you first got there? It's you mentioned Eulenspiegel. What was it like?
Orange.
I'm sorry. To what was it like just to be new and fresh and exploring and New York?
You
What was
know,
it like?
I was getting ready to say that for Vi and I, we were in the golden age in New York. Because truly we were a pansexual group. Um, you had the heterosexuals, you had the um, transgender, you had the bisexual, you had a lot. What you didn't have was a lot of people of color. That's one of the things that you didn't have, but it wasn't something that looked odd. Um, and I say it was the golden age because I got to meet some of the most phenomenal people. You know, Mistress Mir, uh, some of the noted authors out in the world. A lot of creativity. A lot of people who were creative were part of this scene. A lot of people who were powerful were part of the scene. I'm a judge all day long. I'm passing out these verdicts, but now I need someone to pass out a verdict on me. Um, again, there was a different type of stability. The reason why people were into the scene was not because they weren't loved at home. And I'll tell you why I know that is because I used to interview every person before I got involved with them, talk with them. A lot of them, they had very good home bringing. They might have had an incident where the maid may have slapped them. The maid was black, slapped them, stopped them from doing something stupid, and they went, "Oh, I like that." And you know, one of the reasons for talking with them was to trace back where did they come into the kink. Um, but it was a very stable and a very creative group, um, and this is where we met. Uh, People like Pat Califia, Dorothy Ellison, Gail Rubin. We were all sitting in a little room, no bigger than this room I'm sitting in right now. Uh, Joe Arnone. We met Joe at Club O. We had clubs we could go to that were devoted to SNM, BDSM. Um, and Joe said, "Hey, we've got this party going on. It's just a bunch of women. why don't you come? All right, here we go. Vi and I trotting off. And we go to this apartment. And it's a bunch of other women who were into the scene. Um, in the pansexual, you saw a lot of different people, but you didn't see a whole lot of leather. All right. Um, it was the jeans, jean jackets, or black, or nice, you know. Frederick's or Hollywood was our place. That's where we went to get our exotic and whatever. We didn't have a lot of places that made our clothing. Um, Jack was one of the few people that I saw in all leather. And also the gay males that hung with us, they were in their leather. Um, but I remember sitting in a little circle with these women, and we're all just talking. Couple were headed to California, working on the doctor, doing this and that. Never in a million years that we realized that any of us would end up where we're at. Uh, and if you saw us, you was like, hey, there's some heavy duty women there, but you know, you look at us and you, because we're just ordinary folks. Um, Vi and I were sought after, and we moved in many circles. We just kind of moved, and it took us from the heterosexual group. They wanted us at their parties. This is a heterosexual couple. We're only two, again, black couple there, and the only two females couples. But they wanted us to come to their events and to their parties. Um, open up Hellfire. And Hellfire opened up, let me tell you. One, it was ours, but oh, it was dingy. It was awful. It was, I'll tell you how bad it was. You touched the walls from all the sweat, and it was slimy. That's how bad it was. But anybody who was anybody met up at Hellfire, right? Um, they had bouncers, but if you want to say they were dungeon, but all place clubs had to have bouncers. But that was our play space. And like I said, anybody who was anybody, you made your appearance at Hellfire. I hated going to Hellfire because it was so grimy, but it was our grind. Um,
It was your space.
it was our space, by all means. The other thing you have to understand is back when I was Vi and I were coming out, the ratio, there was very few masters and mistresses to the number of people who were submissives and slaves. So it was almost, the ratio was like 1 to 5. Um, so you were very sought after. A lot of time, and you definitely didn't have a whole lot of mistresses around. So spaces were like, women got in for nothing because they wanted you to be there. Um, I could walk by into that play space, and they had a center pole. I could put her up there against that pole, go sit at a table and watch everyone watch. And they're trying to figure out what's going to go on, what's going to happen. And, or someone go up and try to touch her, or talk to her. And I would go, that was the end of that. And then I would go and play with her. We would play. Would energize the room. We would energize each other. And some of the things that people saw how I played was very, very different. Um, you did one thing about it is that you different from what you see today is that um, to take a lot of this without making a sound was a badge of honor. You know? To take all that pain and not scream out. And you knew when there was a wimp or a cry that they were reaching a very, very high level of pain, endurance. We we were very accepting of each other. We as the group in our play spaces, and we had to be because again, people were losing their families, they would lose their kids, they lose their jobs, their reputation, because if you got busted, even though you hadn't broken the law, because a lot of times it was the prostitution law that they tried to apply, which didn't hold water. And there was no assault and battery because it was consenting. But again, all that you went through, you could end up on the front page. People were busted for this. So people had a lot to lose. And we were underground. Um, and that's why you had to know who you were bringing in to the clubs and the scenes. Um, and that introduction was like you putting your reputation on the line. I trust this person. I know they won't do this. Uh, Photos, people knew not to take photos. And actually the photographers that were out there, those pictures were taken a lot of Ephraim's because they asked people, may I? Um, Again, manners were taught at home. So those were an extension, consideration. Um, you were very considerate of people that you were around. It wasn't that we had to be taught some of the basic behaviors that I had a lot of the children coming up now, because a lot of them were homeless, and then are looking for families, but weren't taught these basic behaviors. Uh, it was very, very, very different. What happened to shift? Okay, so you're going from sort of like we're underground, we're beginning to become a little more above ground. But what really kicked that door open was that a very noted lady stopped in the Hellfire one night, and you had the paparazzi there, and it hit the paper, the rag that said, this famous person was seen here.
Mhm.
Now, our underground was exposed. Next thing we got was what we call tourists. These people who were literally tour buses driving up where people were getting out and coming in. And now you had a very different mindset of people, people who were tourists, hit them hard or do this, do that. And our scene, our space became invaded.
Ma'am, what year was that, roughly?
Thank you. 80. Because I was thinking about that, about the 80s, early 80s.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to
Um,
interrupt.
no, that's fine because we're trying to do a timeline
I'm
here.
just trying to give everybody an idea of when we're talking about.
Yeah, we're in the 80s now. So what we began to do was to hold private parties. Um, Vi and I were no longer in an apartment because we went, my sister and Pierce, and Pierce and I were like this. And that really became the first house, if you so to speak. I sent Vi there one night. Vi did not know. I wrote Anne a letter. I sealed it, put it in Vi's mouth along with a rose. I told her you're to drive there, you ring the bell, and you're to have this letter and rose and present it to Mr. Sand. Vi didn't know what was in it. At that point, I had extended my property. And that's what we refer to our slaves as property. Um, and property, the term then meant something very precious to you. All right. And one of the things I said is that we took care of our property. Um, if you didn't care about your property, you wouldn't take care of it. You have a house, you have a car, you take care of these things. You take care of that which you value. Uh, I extended my property to Mr. Sand. It was a shock to her. And I said, you may do it as you please, because I knew that if I could handle anything. And that started a relationship the time she was married. But they were in the middle of her divorce. She had a house, beautiful house. Um, it actually was 5 blocks from where Monique Von Cleef had her place. And we became co-owners. Beautiful, unique house because it had a private entrance for my apartment. We had a basement. She had her own apartment. I had my own apartment. Then we had this beautiful big attic. And our slaves transformed all of that space. Uh, then the basement was the medical and dungeon area. Each of the apartments had their own play spaces. And then we had this magnificent top place with all this equipment. It became known as the Leather Disney World. Because now we left the clubs because they were invaded, and now we had private parties. Uh, and
Before you
how
go on, may I want to clarify. You sent your property to someone you extended your property to them. But I'm imagining that you knew that person and trusted that person and knew that they would care for your property the same, right? This isn't a willy-nilly thing. This is you knew the person and you knew they would care for your property like you would,
I sensed
right?
that she would.
Thank you.
Okay, I did not know that for a fact.
Okay.
That developed out of our friendship. I knew it from watching and observing her. That this was a person that I could trust. And we had had some conversations, you know,
Right.
um, about how we cared for our slaves. So I knew that she was of the same mindset, but it was, again, an instinct, something just said to do this.
Mhm.
All right. And a lot of what we did back then, or what I did, was instinct. Something just said, do it. Trust that this is the right thing to do. Um,
Thank you.
and it
I
was,
would have asked that.
yes, it was the right thing. We did develop a very, very close relationship. Um, we hosted some of the major parties. Um, it got to the point where, you know, it was invitation only. You had to know who was coming into your home to begin with. It was a sought after invitation. People from all over the country, all over the world began to hear about these parties, um, where, for all intents and purposes, it looked like a nice little ball, you know, caviar flowing, champagne fountain. This is classy. You know, these people were not, again, dressed in leather, they're dressed in nice gowns and what have you. But let me tell you, when it got down to playing, whew, lights out, everybody was playing. Everyone was playing, you know. So it just, they very much evolved. And this took the place of going to the clubs because we had a number of clubs out there. You know, there was Club 54. There was a night that we would go, the BDSM community would take over um, Studio 54.
Really?
Yeah, there was Night Moves. That was another club. Club O was Lois and Judy. They opened up that play space for um, us to be in. Um, so if you weren't going to like Lois and Judy's club or to a private event, or I wouldn't say private, it was fairly known event that was put out there of BDS people, you were going to these private parties. Um, then now you're moving towards the IML IMsL era where a new group of people are coming in. Now, I said the Vi and I moved in very different circles, um, all over. Went to our first gay pride in New York. Vi on the leash. We didn't see a lot of people who were leather people, so you kind of stood out. Except for we saw these men, one tall, Jerry and Tom, um, in leather chaps with their ass out, and Vi went, ah, you know, mind yourself. And it's another one of those. They turn around and they looked at us and they said, ah, newbies. And so they took us under their wing right then and there. And I said, come on, follow us. We'll show you around. And they took us to this one um, leather club, leather bar. And we were thrown out because we were women. And I remember that they were pissed, and they said, we will never visit this bar again. We always patronize this bar. If they can't be here, then we don't want to be here. We won't be here again. And then they took us to, what was the bar again, Vi? Is that the one we got kicked out of? We got kicked out of the Ramrod first, and then they took us to the Badlands. I remember it was down on the corner. Now I uh, I remember Jerry taking off his cover and putting it on my head, and he said, "That completes it." It was big, but you don't know how proud I was to wear that cover. I mean, I was like, I I looked like those pictures. I was a leather person. I was a different leather person, but it was. And we went into the in Badlands, and they didn't have a problem with us at all, um, except for one person, and that person was like, "Why are women here?" And so they decided to pick up a beer bottle, and I saw it coming, and they threw it, and I ducked, and Miss Johnson got hit in the nose, a broken nose. They got rid of him, got that person out, but we never had a problem going there. So when I got ready to take off the cover to return it, uh, Jerry said no.
Sorry, ma'am. I just commented that was the best bar fight she ever had. I'm sorry. I this I when
You know what?
when you go ahead.
That's a smart ass um, masochist. Her and Violetta, they're the ones that caused that saying, a Sam, because they would just sit there while Jack and I would be holding court or talking, and something Jack said, and Violetta made a remark, and it came out. So you're a smart masochist, huh? Because you know you're gonna get it. You just want to make a remark like that, and that's where the term Sam came from.
Why
It was
am I not surprised?
a conversation between the two of them. But Jerry, he gave me his cover. He
You
just
were
met
about.
me.
Let me back you up. Let me back you up because I don't want to miss this at all. You said you were about to take the cover off.
Yeah,
You went to take the cover off.
I went to give it back to him, and he said, "No, it's yours. Keep it." Um, and they became my leather daddies. Again, that's Christopher Street. That's the dock area. That's a whole very different part of the community of the BDSM. We're used to being around a very mixed crowd, but that was just basically the men's crowd and a lot of leather. Okay? Um, and as time went on, they talked to us and they taught us things. And then they talked about hellfire in Chicago. And these stories fascinated by, but it was just for men. But it fascinated her, and she wanted to just go and see what it was. Oh, she's always the curious one. She would always be the one that could go out there. I'm quiet, I'm shy. But Vi was the person that I sent to do my bidding. Uh, Not to get ahead of myself, they were getting ready to move to Chicago. I think we got to know them maybe 6 months to a year. And in that time, we just learned so much from them. Um, and we asked them, how do we repay you? How do we just pay homage to you for what you've done for us? And Jerry said, each one teach one. That's what you need to do. Each one teach one. And we were charged with doing that. That's where that saying came from. And we began to live our life by each one teaching one. We didn't really know that we were doing that, but we knew that whatever we did, we needed to give back to the community in some way. Um, so now I bring that into perspective because that was about the time that AIDS, this this horrible virus, is hitting the gay community, and it was hitting mainly males. Um, it did hit women, um, and the way that the community reacted, and like I said, we thought we were doing things safely at the time. You know, Crisco and fisting. Anywhere you went, you saw a big old can of Crisco. Um, don't know really how that all began, but we know that it began to affect us. We began to lose a very important part of the community that would have taught the next generation. and a whole segment was lost to AIDS. Um, today people are survivors. It's like you got AIDS. It was like people thought it was, the end of it for you. And for many, we lost so many. It was. Um, but Vi and I had matured. We had left just as this crisis was beginning to hit. We left the East Coast and we moved to the West Coast. And they were talking about closing down the bathhouses. So we moved there right about the time there was, because Nan and John had a bathhouse and they were in the midst of having to close it down. Um, Very different now. Now you're getting more into the clubs, organizations, and more of there being a activist side to it, actively. So from where we were playing um, underground to the
Literally.
clubs, all right, from the clubs to the private parties. Now you have clubs, more clubs than you had before. Because that little circle I talked to you about Joe Arnone was talking about starting leather um, LSM.
Mm-hmm. Lesbian sex mafia.
Yes, I got LSU on my brain, so I had to make sure. um, so having specific clubs, um, geared towards women, geared towards men. So there were a lot of and clubs, and you were having a lot of organization. Now we were hit with this AIDS crisis and all the bigotry and the lack of funding, lack of education. We're scared. Um, for all intents and purposes, still am a bisexual person, but AIDS just kind of really put a kibosh. You didn't know. Uh, one night could change your life or end your life. So, and then you had the beginning of the title holder circuit. Um, I was on the outside watching. One of the things that I consciously did was I said to Vi, I need you to go out there and to serve this community on my behalf, serve the community with the honor, integrity, and the dignity and all the things that I've taught you. Um, you're not free. You're just going to be out there in the community. And we're not sure what that looked like or what that was, but there was growing things happening, and I was a person who would stay and make sure that there was a place for her to return to, that she was taken care of, that she didn't have to worry about anything. I freed her of that responsibility so that she could be out in the community serving. So even if she was serving another mistress, that mistress was going out and about. And, when you have a slave like Vi, people take notice of that. Um, And because a slave back then could not be very vocal, right? They could ask for permission to be vocal. Uh, a lot of times she wrote down her thoughts of what was happening. That's how she got the journal. Because a lot of times they didn't have the liberty to say, well, you know what, today, mistress, I think I'm going to do this. Is that okay with you, mistress? No, I dictated to her what was to be the day. Um, some would say they would suffer in silence. I would not. I would disagree, because if they're suffering, then that's a bad situation.
Yeah, doing your job.
Right, that's a bad situation. Um, so now you have the title holder circuit, and of course they had wanted me to run for IMsL long time, and again I was like, no. I was the person to stay in the background. Um, and then it was, next thing I know, we're talking the 80s, where we we moved to Oklahoma in 1989. Uh, Job transferred me there. But before that, before we left California, early on, we were staying with John and Nan, and Vi had been instructed, because at that time, let me back up a second. I had turned Vi over to another mistress, uh, because one of the things is that I loved that person. And for me at the time, it was very difficult to separate. I'm doing all these things to the person I love. Um, I don't want to be abusive to her. One of the things I did do, and I know that a lot of masters and mistresses didn't do this, because they expected a slave to take any of the crap, um, and that there's a point where you cross the line. And I said to Vi, and I drilled this in because it was a very difficult thing to drill into her head. You are to protect me and make sure that I don't make an ass out of myself. You will still pay for that action, and to remind you of your place, but I expect you to do it. But no one has the right to treat you badly. No one, um, including myself. So if at some point, for whatever reason, I cross that line where I'm abusing you, you have every right to stop me, to stop me. I had to drill that into her, because I wasn't always there to be protective, to step in. And so I needed her to be able to do that for herself. And then she would come back and tell me what happened, so that, if I ran into this person again, I would deal with it. We had an incident. This is how we met Nan, because Vi had been instructed by Mr. Sand to send something to Mr. Nan. So she sent it, and it never got there. So Mr. Sand, you know, this is a bad thing. Your slave has failed. So Vi sends it like a second time, doesn't get there for some reason still. Now, Anne's looking at Vi like, I don't think you did it. So the third time I said, I'm going to send it. I know it's going to get there because I'm going to send it. Well, it turns out it didn't. So Mistress Nan calls talking about you need to be punished. And when I arrive there, I'm going to punish you. And I said, okay, but you need to know, because I got on the phone with her and I said, you need to know that she didn't mail it, I did. So if there's going to be any punishing, you have to punish me. And she's like, whoa, who is this person? Who is this person? Because I said, I sent it. So I know my slave is not lying. And from that, she wanted to know who I was, and we met. Um, and we became very close. And so again, that was this, there were things that weren't happening well with Mistress Anne. And I sent Vi to West Coast. So throughout our relationship, throughout our 50 years together, Vi has been away a lot. Or sometimes because of my job, we were in the air passing each other, or you know, she's coming in and I'm leaving or something like that. Um, so, and we were definitely very different because I had a girlfriend, I had a poly relationship going on, and people was trying to figure out what that was about. We have been doing a lot of things that were on a lot of cutting edges. We were ahead of our times. So going back to, she's now in service to Mistress Nan, and Mistress Nan uh, told her to clean out this closet that had a lot of books in it. I remember coming home and Vi being very, very visibly upset. And she's like, look at this. Look at this. Look at all this history. Look at this. It's crumbling. Look at this. I'm tired. I remember lying there, and she's like, and so I get up and I look at it, and she said, look at all this. It's just, it's, uh, she was just, we got to preserve this history. We got to save it. And I said, okay. Little did I know. I should have remember how her mind thinks. I had already given her permission. I didn't say how much she had to say, but in her mind, it meant saving everything. I didn't know this was happening. I thought it was a few little books. That's all I remember. I was stuck in that. So my job would move me, and so I never knew these boxes were being packed up, and more boxes. Um, so we moved from California to Oklahoma. Now we really got little kids coming to the house, and little kids in the sense of leather kids. And I mean, they're bouncing up and down, and I'm like, you see that door? Don't come in.
That I'm familiar with.
You knock. If it's something important, you knock. So I remember the transformation of Vi became Mama Vi. We again, they were having these leather, um, you know, it was a little more open. The generation was coming out. Um, Vi was there when we hit that point where you had a generation looking at more experienced people who happened, in my opinion only, who let the egos get out of control, trying to top each other in a group of newbies that had not been warned.
Hello, Miss Carter. Instead of a costume change, you did a background swap.
I did a background check. Thank you. So I was talking about this collection.
The few little boxes. It was
Few-
just a few little boxes.
And we went to Oklahoma, and then we had the kids, the new crop of kids that were coming out. And Vi would be pulling out these things, which is fine because we collected things, but I didn't realize, you know, I did see more boxes, but it just didn't dawn on me what was in those boxes and what was happening. Then these kids, which were very interesting kids, you know, and I will talk about that because one little one who had AIDS, his name was Larry. He was Mr. Oklahoma. And Larry just kind of stole my heart. Um, he just all he wanted to do was just to lie in my lap and just hear me tell stories or talk to him. Um, again, I was not very out and visible. Uh, but Larry wanted me to be beside him when he marched in the Pride Parade in Oklahoma City. He kind of, how do you say no to someone who has AIDS, who knows that their time is numbered? He was very sick that day, and it was hot, and I said I was going to march with him. He gave me that kind of the courage to be out there. Um, and then all the other little leather children. Um, and I remember we would go to watch them clog, or we would go to see a leather event. Um, and I met Amy at that time, Amy Meek, who was getting ready to run for IMsL. And I remember we met at this lady's house who they called Mama. That's what happened. And all the little leather kids, and they were asking her questions. And just like typical kids, they don't realize what they've said. And one of them said, well, you know what? You're really, you're really the mama. And I'm watching this. I'm watching this lady change. And the kids crown her mama. And that's when she took on this persona of mama. And they start calling her mama.
Miss Carter, I'm going to need a year on that.
A what?
I'm going to need a year on that. What year was that?
We're talking 90, 90, 93, 90, 92, 93, because we were in Oklahoma at the time. That's where
Okay.
we met the gay rodeo. And again, we've never been around horses, and we were part of the Tulsa gay rodeo group. We were only women, and we were only Black women who never rode horses. And we became that cheering squad for those men who went. But there were also few of them were into leather. And so now I'm I've already started some organizations or relaunched some organizations that come to Oklahoma. They need someone to help them to organize it. I remember Bo said, "Hey, I'm gonna take you to this leather club. This group needs you. As long as you're going to be there with me, Bo. All right, okay." Next thing I know, Bo is out of the group. He has quit it because they pissed him off, and I am stuck being secretary or something. Now I'm an officer. How did this happen? For the TULSA group. And we put on the first Pride picnic. It was like a very small area. People showed up, but it was very small. But they had never met leather people like us. And our knowledge and what we had seen outside of the world just intrigued them and helped them to grow as a community. There was the Oklahoma City group, and then there was Tulsa group. So we're part of the gay rodeo, and now we're part of the leather club, and we are coaching and guiding a whole generation who's running for IML or running for IMsL. They're having their own events. And people, just like tonight, wanted me because they didn't believe I existed, because Vi would talk about me. And
I
people,
believe there were times where people thought that you were an imaginary friend, I believe.
correct, that Vi was only saying that so that people would not play with her because she honored that bond that we had unless she was given permission to play. And that is leading up to IMsL. So
Ma'am,
one year, 1995, the year that Pat Bailey ran.
Miss Carter,
Yes.
I have a big ask. We are at the point in time when I would normally do questions.
And I figured were, and I was going to say,
And
do we want to break off? Because I want to give you an opportunity to
well,
ask questions.
I have a
No,
big ask. I have a
no,
big ask,
no, no.
and I don't want to keep you up past your bedtime
What's the
because I
big
know
ask?
how important that is. The big ask is, can this be part one and we do a part two
Did I just
when
say
you
no? Did I just say
recover?
no?
I did
Did
anybody
I
else hear
just
Miss
say no?
Carter
I
say no?
knew
I
what you
did
were
not
gonna.
hear a no. You're getting
I
to
didn't hear
this part,
anything.
and I was not going to interrupt anything you've said to this point. So you can take your time, sleep. You can
Could we get
recover
a
from
show
this
of hands?
interruption. Yes. Can I have some reactions
Yeah, I would
to
like
who
to.
would like to see a part two for Miss Carter? And that's going to go nuts right now. So, ma'am, I could either keep you up late tonight or we can do a part two. And I don't want to keep you up late tonight. I promise they're all reacting.
Already, I see the reactions, and I heard Miss Johnson give a command. Every now and then, she can give a command. Yeah,
Can we
we can
can we
work on part two, but I would love to answer some
I
questions.
would love for you to get some questions. Folks, if you are comfortable being on the recording, have your camera on when you raise your hand, and we will spotlight you and make you a part of the recording. If you are not comfortable with being on the recording, have your camera off, and we will just hear your voice. I saw a bunch of hands. Wolf, I believe there were some questions from earlier. Is that Gwen? Gwen, do you have your hand up?
You said to raise your hand if you were comfortable being on the recording, so I'll raise my hand.
No, and you have a question, but
No.
let's. No,
I
okay.
know this beautiful woman fairly well.
Yes, Gwen did a phenomenal job, and I'll talk about her in part 2.
Oh Lord. Maybe I won't show
Because
up.
she's a
See,
big
Miss
part.
Carter, misery loves company. We can spread it around a little bit.
She's a big part of part 2. And some
I
of
do see Miss Bridget with a hand up. Come on in.
Miss Carter.
yes.
So leading up to Tulsa, you guys were on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the difference between the leather community on the West Coast and what you found when you got to Oklahoma?
Okay. Oklahoma was pretty much like it was in Indiana. Okay. Very naive. See, West Coast was very progressive. All right. Very progressive. As a matter of fact, you take Washington State and Oregon, they have done, first of all, that's the cutting capital. If you want beautiful cutting art, head out that way. That's where you got. Phoenix is a phenomenal person. Laney, I met Laney. I watched Laney do a cutting. Phenomenal job. But they were also very progressive in their thinking. They would do things. And the rest of the world was like, you know what? Washington and Oregon, man, they eat their young. Eat their young. People know that some of the things that they were trying, they shouldn't try. What they were doing, let them do it. Nobody would say, you know what, maybe you ought to think about shooting staples into somebody. Or maybe you should think about using that chainsaw. What they would just allow them to happen. And if they were successful, everybody was happy and we could do it. If they weren't successful, they crucified them. And so part of where you got the dungeon master from was that whole thing happening out there. And one of the instructions that was given to the dungeon masters, because one of my friends was one, and they said, if you hear a power saw or anything, run there, run in and stop it right away.
I'll take DM instructions I've never heard for 1,000, Alec.
But they're very experienced, knowledgeable people. The Oklahoma group was not. They were in their own little world and really didn't comprehend that there was a larger group of people out there, a greater community. And as more of them ventured out, they became aware and they grew as a community. And also through our connections of people that we knew, we were able to bring people into the community for their events to be judges. And it kind of put them on once Larry Everett won IML, we were on the map. Oklahoma was on the map. They grew as a community. And when we got ready to leave there, something very interesting happened. I never thought they would leave, but a lot of them migrated to the East Coast, kind of like followed us out there. And it just to watch them, that whole community change. If you go back there today, it is not the gay community, the leather community that we left. It is larger. It is one of the biggest ones in the country. That's the growth. That's what's going to happen here in Indiana too.
It already is.
From your mouth to God's ears, I swear. We need it.
Thank you, Bridget. Wolf? Oh, that went away. Blair, go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, Miss Jill.
Hello.
Question. Earlier you stated that in addition to the men who died during the AIDS crisis, there were also women who died. Did you know any of them, and do you have any stories that you could share on behalf of them for us younger generations?
I knew one of the first ones who passed away from AIDS. And as a matter of fact, when I first met her, she had a master. She was so shy. And I remember saying to her, you don't have to be shy. One day you're going to come into your own. In passing. And she did. She became the president of LSM. She grew into being a very, very, very beautiful woman. And then she discovered that she had AIDS. And we lost her. So yeah, I knew one of the first women to pass from AIDS.
Thanks, Blair.
Again, because we were bisexual, we were very open. And you didn't know. You know, we weren't educated about how this virus was transmitted or how we had to be safe. Just pretty much like the pandemic we just went through and still are going through. You know, in the beginning, people didn't know. They were scared. They didn't know how, being transmitted, so, but it was something that was to the gay community. So it didn't happen to the greater society, except for one thing. You had some men who, as they were saying, were on the down low and they were crossing over. So they were married, they were heterosexual, they had girlfriends, they had families and what have you, and they were crossing over and taking it into the mainstream community. One thing you understand is that the leather community was at the forefront of raising awareness and raising funds to take care of our own. One of the things we've got to do is to break down this wall between the gay community, the LGBTQ plus community, and us. We are stronger together. There was a point where the gay community, and they got to wake up to the point that you thought you could assimilate and be straight-laced and they would accept you because all it was is you love someone differently. They didn't want to be associated with people who were kinky, and they still don't. The Leather Day of Caring broke down some of those walls. But we have got to unite. We're fighting not only to love who we want to love, but we are fighting to love how we live. They go together. And we have been at the forefront kicking down these doors, and then people forget about us. So we, as the leather people, kick that door down, because right now, I'm preaching a little bit, it really is critical that we are boots to the ground, getting out there, getting people to register and to vote. For someone who's 71 years old, looking at what's happening, I'm scared, not for me. I'm scared for the future generation because I've not seen this. This is madness. And so we really do need to get out there. You know, not only am I seeing history repeat itself, but I'm seeing things we've never seen before. And you guys are the media savvy people. Get the information out there. You know, when you see these stupid ass stories, put them up, post them. That's what if you look every now and then, I will post a dumb something that is happening out there and saying, we need to wake ourselves. You know, the woke people are the ones on the outside. They were woke to what we already knew was happening to us as people of color, as Black people, as leather people, as gay people. We already knew this stuff. Y'all just became woke to it. But now we got to wake up ourselves, the people that are sleeping in our community. Because as when I was in college, what they called it, shit's coming down. And that's not a good thing. That means you got to be prepared to go and deal with it, fight with it. Some man's already said there will be bloodshed. This is no joke. We already saw it. There are people out there that just that moral compass, it's broke. So instead of, you know, don't throw that punch, all you're seeing is people are letting go of their anger. And they're letting go in the worst possible way. So when we say there's going to be violence out there, there will be. Which way do you want it to be? Do you want to be fighting the violence to put it down? Or do you want to be fighting the violence because it's heaped on you because it's been unleashed from the White House? Either way, there is going to be hell. It's just which way do you want to pay it? I want to pay it where at least I know the person in the White House is going to be sending out some of the troops and some of the people to help us. But don't be fooled. Because this hatred and ignorance and bigotry has infiltrated our military, our police. And so when those things break down, you only have the community and the people you trust around you to fight. And some of the things we need to start gearing up is having survival talks, having self-defense talks, because this is real. And for those who want to sleep, when I say a thing, no, it's not going to happen. Let me tell you, it is happening. And I am seeing it, I'm reliving it. I know what it was in the 60s when we had to fight. This is worse. This is worse. Because at least there was things like civility in place. People knew how to be civil. All that's broken down. But you can fight strategically. You're smart. You're a smart group of people. Use the media tools that you have. Get out there, tell people to vote. Educate them on the things that are happening. Let us be prepared. Let us wake ourselves up. I look at you, you're the young ones. You're the ones I'm entrusting this with. Yeah.
And the congregation said, amen.
Amen.
Karen, are you willing to be on camera?
Did you say Karen?
Yes, Miss Pierce.
I am on camera.
Are you willing to be on the Zoom on the recording?
Oh, yes, I am. Thank you.
Then please go ahead with your question.
All
And
right.
welcome.
Thank you so much. Miss Carter, I want to say on a personal note, I found the community in 1996 when you were IMsL, and you were one of the only women that would present femme on occasion. And I'm a femme presenting woman. I came in through the gay men's leather scene. So you made a very strong impact on me, so much so I still have your card that says each one teach one. And I also have in my possession this. My leather brother at the time, Slacker, him and I did a webzine called Leather Online, and he bound the first 3 issues. He also bound this for me. It's called Rites of Passage and Experiences of Yesteryears by Mistress Jill Carter. Copyright 1980, originally written in 1980, revised in 1995, edited by Princess. I don't know here. I'm going to see if I can show it.
That is a very special copy. You're the only one that has that. And I'm trying to figure out how he got it.
I do not know how he got it, but I was always in our leather family. I was always the historian. I'm a scrapbooker. I have a whole bookcase. It's all my leather books that I've collected over 30 years. And when I was going through, because now I'm at the point where I'm teaching history classes as well, and I'm going through all my stuff and from years and years ago, and I found this a couple of years ago, and I just have not had the opportunity to reach out to you or to Mama Vi about this because I had a feeling this is not something that's out there a lot.
It is not out there at all.
Do
So,
you have a copy is what I want to know.
I do. Only very rare people got that. And so there's a reason he has that.
Well, my sir was Master Lewis Michael, so he knew Mistress Mere, and so there might be other avenues and then, like I said, I was the family historian, so it came into my possession, and I just it will go to the Carter Johnson Leather Library sooner or later. That's why I brought it up tonight. I didn't know if y'all wanted it sooner. If not, I use it a lot when I talk about history, and I teach those classes. But if you want it back home, I will definitely give it to you.
We can talk later.
Cool. But
Okay.
I just wanted to bring that up because I had the opportunity, and it was a pleasure listening to you tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have shocked me. You've blown me away because I'm right in the midst of saying, you know what, I got to publish this. And I don't think that anyone really had until you said something. So how it got out there. Yes.
We can go through connections because back then the community was much smaller than it is now. And there is a certain amount of people that I might have gotten this to our family.
That's all right. I'm going to talk with you later and we can get some feedback that will be of value as I try to launch that.
Wonderful. I would love that. Well, I'll shut up so the next person can ask their question. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. That's an amazing little piece of history you've got there.
Yeah.
And on that note, we did get permission from Ms. Carter earlier to get So You Want to Be a Leather title holder back into print. So we will be working on that as well. Susie, you want to be on camera on Zoom?
Yeah, that's great.
It's my favorite San Diegan.
Speaking of leather title holders, how did you see the growth of the title circuit have an effect on the community as a whole, especially since it's, from my perspective, which hasn't been as long as yours, obviously, but it seemed to be very politically active, supporting the community around AIDS and raising funds for that to whatever it is we have today. So I'm wondering how you saw that, the advent and the growth of it.
So, like a lot of things, you got to question whether or not it is outlived itself. It was a time that it gave us the platforms that we needed. during my title year, one of the things that I observed that changed, that shifted, was that we were starting to have a lot of titles now, bar titles or what have you. And I remember going to certain places where they had brought in some high-level judges, flown them in, didn't have any contestants. And they were taking people off the streets, literally saying, you know, you look good in leather, let's put you up there. And suddenly people who had no knowledge of what this community was about were stars, superstars overnight. And I literally would watch them change as they got up there and they put the sash on them. And titles now, what I saw was that the title was validating people. You know, I am somebody now. Instead of people making the titles, just having that on made them somebody. So to me, it has become something that validates people. We have so many titles out there till it's a whole lot of noise, and you can't. I was fortunate. I was at a pivotal point where, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of title holders, and you still could have a voice that could be heard. My thing is that you don't have to have a title to make a change. I didn't need to run for the title. All right. The title didn't make me. It didn't make Judy. If you look at the number of people that you remember as title holders, they already came to the community with something, so they didn't need it, and they continued to do and be active after the titles. You know, and right now you wear it for 1 year, you're a celebrity for a year, and you get your name on the list of title holders. Don't have to have a title to make a difference. You don't need a whole group of people to make a difference either. Just go out there and do it.
Do you think the title circuit still holds value?
That's a loaded question.
It is a loaded question. It could hold a lot more value than it does right now. Right now. It does not hold the value that it used to hold, to answer your question. I'm going to be kind of diplomatic when I answer.
It's a question I ask when I judge, you know, on the occasions I judged, you know, does it still hold value? And I actually recently got a question, or a couple years ago when I judged here in San Diego, because I've gotten jaded on the title holder circuit. I was a local title holder, and a young guy was running, and he'd been involved for a little bit, but he talked about it still brings us together, and I can appreciate that I still go to contests because I want to see the people, you know, I want to see people I care about and that I haven't seen in 5, 10, 20 years.
But you probably would still go if they just said, hey, we're having a big gathering.
I would absolutely go.
You know, we're having a big party, or, you know, what have you, and not necessarily have a title holder thing. That just kind of is the selling point. But when you get there and you don't really have a whole lot of contestants and people competing, you know, what do you have but a big party?
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Fantastic question, Susie. Is that all?
Yeah, that's all. Thank
They
you.
were great. Thank you. All right, folks. I am not going to get in trouble with Miss Carter and keep her up past the agreed upon bedtime.
I do appreciate all of you who came out tonight. Thank you so much. I had to ask myself, what is it that you want to hear from me? What stories? I hope that I've entertained you then.
Oh, everybody was enthralled, including myself.
you know.
The format for this is for the guests to tell their story and be interrupted as little as possible.
You did,
And you killed it.
you did a very nice job. And again, thank you. You don't know how much of an honor it is to be here tonight.
Ma'am, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you tonight at the end of part 1.
I know
And
I will do part 2 for you.
and everybody here got to witness the longest conversation I've ever had with Jill Carter.
That is very true. That is
And
very
with
true.
with that, thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and stop the recording. Oh, you got something
Hold
else?
on.
Go ahead. Yep.
Uh,
One more thing.
I just need to know how to get in touch with you,
With me,
Miss Pierce.
Miss Pierce.
Yeah.
Miss Pierce, will you please private message Shar
Yeah.
your contact
that'll work.
information, and we will get that to Miss Carter.
Okay, is that okay, Miss Pierce?
Let's go ahead and stop. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Hold
We'll
on.
end the recording there.
Hold on.
What am
I
holding
would
on
like
for?
to let
Oh, you've
Miss
got
Jill
it.
know that there have been quite a few donations to the Carter Johnson,
Oh, good.
none of which will have any fees taken out of them, so every dollar goes in. Period.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I
And
appreciate
I
it.
have to thank one person specifically. They will know who they are. Instead of doing the $5 donation, they actually ordered 5 $1 donations so that there are 5 new subscriptions from just that one person for the Jill Carter tier. And I thought that was awesome, and they needed to know that you're fucking awesome.
Thank you. Thank
Jar, I
you
guess
all.
it's a good thing I didn't wait till tonight to donate.
we will recognize that Miss Gwen Hardy gave a very nice donation a few days ago, and it is greatly appreciated.
You know what? I'm going to say this. Gwen has given so much to this community. You know, I know what this person here has given to this community. She's quiet like me. You know?
Yeah, and I still trying to figure out whenever I'm gonna make it back up that way. I still have some work to do.
You sure do.
We'll drive down and get you.
So,
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Miss Carter, thank you so much.
Good night.